Well, our top focus remains all that's been happening in Iran over the last 2 weeks. In fact, the protests have now entered the third week, with President Donald Trump having promised to help protesting Iranians.
Now, he says Iran has crossed his red line on killing protesters, and U.S. military is studying very strong options there.
Speaking to reporters on Air Force One, President Trump confirmed that he's considering potential military action. He even said that the military is looking at some very strong options and will make a determination. But in the same conversation, Trump also said that Iran wants to negotiate and meeting is being set up.
Well, multiple reports say that Trump has seen potential plans ranging from possible military strikes to non-military actions. And according to the Wall Street Journal's aides are set to brief the president again on Tuesday. He could be presented with various measures, including military, cyber, and economic options.
According to Axios report, most of the options presented to the president at this stage are not kinetic. They include cyber attacks, information and propaganda operations, further sanctions, and even deploying forces such as an aircraft carrier to the region. The report even adds that most people inside the Trump administration think that a military action at this stage would undermine the protests.
Now, that is why Trump is also in no rush to meet Reza Pahlavi, the son of the deposed Shah. Pahlavi, on his part, has praised Trump's pledge of support for the protesters.
Speaking to Fox News, Pahlavi claimed that Trump's words of solidarity have a tremendous positive effect. He directly appealed to President Trump to seal his legacy by liberating Iran and make the country great again.
Well, another person urging Trump for decisive action in Iran is Senator Lindsey Graham. Graham urged to kill the Iranian leadership to end the killing of the people. He predicted that if Trump's actions end well, Hamas and Hezbollah will be gone and peace will break out in the region.
Iran has warned against any U.S. intervention. In fact, Iran's parliamentary speaker, Mohammad Bagher, has threatened attacks on Israel and centers of U.S. military and shipping in retaliation.
Now, in Britain, meanwhile, the government is examining how to change the law to ban the Islamic Revolutionary Guards of Iran. Ministers have repeatedly faced calls to proscribe the IRGC, a powerful arm of the Iranian regime.
Civil rights groups claim that the IRGC is trying to suppress protests with violence, including live-fire tear gas shells and mass detentions taking place. According to US-based human rights activist news agency, at least 544 people have died during the ongoing protests, while more than 10,000 have been sent to prisons.
All right, to discuss more, we're now being joined live by Zahim from Washington, D.C.'s former Undersecretary of Defense in the George W. Bush administration and is currently serving as Senior Advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Always a good time having you on the broadcast. Mrs. Hakim, I'll just start by asking, U.S., of course, has said that they're looking for options, how to handle this issue in Iran. What are the options in reality that they have? And if strikes are, what are the possible sites that they could have been thinking of attacking?
Well, first of all, I think what you're seeing is Mr. Trump is trying to define a very different approach to Iranian protests than, say, the protests in 2009, where Mr. Obama basically stood aside and let these protests continue until the regime put them down. Clearly, with over 500 people killed, as you've reported, over 10,000 arrested, several thousand wounded, Mr. Trump is essentially sending a message, not just to the regime, but I think especially to the military. There's a real difference between the Iranian military and the IRGC, and frankly, the Basij, which is the semi-official group that really does the IRGC's dirty work as well. And the message is stand aside or join the protesters. And if you look at some of the recent overthrows of authoritarian governments, It's always been the military standing aside and actually supporting the protesters. If that happens, that already will, I think, be the death knell of Khamenei and his crowd. And as we know, it's been reported in multiple places, Khamenei has provided for himself and his closest advisors and family to move to Russia so that he could be perhaps a next door neighbor to Mr. Assad. Sure, we are looking at military options. The Iranians are very proud people, though, and they may not take kindly to America attacking, unless, of course, it's attacking some of the IRGC facilities, because most people hate the IRGC for what they're doing by shooting their own people.
Right. Mr. Zakim, point taken. My next question to you is going to be in two parts. One, hypothetically, if we were to assume that the US does zero in on carrying out military strikes on Iran, do you see the Israeli forces aiding or helping US in carrying out the airstrikes, one? And second, what role do you see of Reza Pahlavi here vis-a-vis if there is a possible regime change in Iran?
Well, on the first one, if the Israelis are clever, they'll stand aside. By getting involved, there's a lot of support for Israel among many Iranians. But that would give the regime an excuse to say, look, this is all being fomented by Israel. The Israelis don't need to help the United States. We can take care of our military responsibilities without Israel. Could you repeat the second question, please?
Yes, Mr. Zakim, I wanted to know what role do you see Reza Pahlavi here vis-a-vis a possible regime change that could happen in Iran?
Well, one of the things that we learned, unfortunately, from the Iraq War is that when Mr. Chalabi was going around Washington and saying how important he would be in a new Iraq, and of course, that got us into all kinds of problems. Yeah, there have been cases in history where outsiders have come in and changed the nature of a country. Look at Lenin coming in from Switzerland. But by and large, it is so much safer if indeed, and frankly, Khomeini himself came in from the outside. But it's much better if there's an action internal to Iran, and then if the Shah's son or someone else is welcomed in, that's a very, very different story.
Right.
Also, how do you analyze the role of the government? The government has now ordered counter rallies instead of calming the things down there. What kind of role is the government playing there? And Pezeshkian, who is somebody who has recognized as a liberal president, and is there some kind of some kind of division between the regime and the government?
Well, it's clear that they're all frozen. They have not had anything like this experience that's gone on. I mean, you're looking at the pictures right now. This has been going on for days, and the people are not going home. Even when they're being shot at, they are not going home. And so the government is frozen. It doesn't know whether it should continue to follow the Khamenei line, which is essentially to keep shooting, or the more moderates who say they will only survive if they make concessions. Part of the problem for them, for the moderates, is that they've made some concessions. One doesn't have to wear a chador as a woman and will not be arrested for it. They've made a few small concessions. It's clear that that is not what is motivating the protesters. The protesters are sick and tired of this theocracy, and that is creating a huge strategic problem for the regime, because the ideologues cannot even see that there's a problem, and the practical ones recognize that they've got a massive, massive issue that they're not sure they can resolve. And again, I will emphasize, where has the military been? So far, it's not been the military, and that must be scaring the regime and the moderates as well.
Right. Mr. Zakim, point taken. And just to continue with the earlier point I mentioned regarding the involvement of Israel, the reason I said that is because Netanyahu has been quite equivocal, calling on the protesters to ramp up their protests. But that's all the time we had on the broadcast here. Appreciate you joining us and speaking to WION.
Look, Netanyahu has made his career out of saying he's the security prime minister. And of course, that was shattered by the October 7th Hamas attack. So he's trying essentially to redeem himself. He's already done some of that in Lebanon. He's done some of that by essentially weakening Hamas. And of course, if Iran loses the regime that it has now, where does Hamas get its support? Where does Hezbollah get its support? They would like to tag along, but his strategy has always been to drag the United States in. Mr. Trump, he doesn't need anybody to drag him in. He's ready to go in if he wants to go in. Maybe the Israelis will tag along, but that would only be in order to enhance Netanyahu's own image as the security guy.
Right.
We don't need the Israelis for this.
Of course, we'll be looking at how this might be solved without really military strikes. We got to see that and how the whole thing plays out and how the world looks at this. But thank you so much for joining on the broadcast and giving your opinion. A pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.